What's up YouTube, and welcome to another Procreate tutorial where today I'm going to show you how you can create this minimalistic canyon design as well as this final little 3D sort of effect to it as well. As always, there's a link in the description down below to my Patreon where you can go ahead and grab all of the requirements completely free, and there you'll find the slightly unique canvas size for today's design compared to what I normally use, and the free palette as well. Of course, everything else is built into Procreate. So I hope you have fun with today's design. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram. But most importantly, come and share them with the Discord community. It's completely free to join, and it's one of the best spaces on the internet. There you go, I said it. For you to come and share your Procreate work or traditional work or any piece of art that you want to share with the community that we have over there. So again, links to that will be in the description down below. And if you want even more tutorials from me, you can come and join me over on Patreon, where I now have a catalogue of over 100, that's right, over 100 Patreon exclusive tutorials that you can go ahead and get access to when you become a patron, that starts from as minimal as £3 or $4.50 depending on where you are in the world. And again, you get access to over 100 Patreon exclusive tutorials. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the tutorial, and let's get started. So once you've created your canvas size, you'll be able to see on my canvas, I've actually added a drawing guide. So if you go up to your actions and we go to the canvas tab and we go ahead and go to the drawing guide, if you turn that on and edit the drawing guide, I've set the 2D grid to a grid size of 500 pixels. That way you can use the grid on my screen against the grid on your screen to work out where I'm laying things out, etc. So let's go ahead and crack on with today's design. So we'll go to our background color and we're going to go ahead and set it to the color of the sky in the bottom right of the palette. And we'll hit done. And then on this empty layer here, we're going to want to go ahead and add in our water. So we're going to go to our colors. We'll grab the color in the top right of the palette. We'll go to our selection tool and we'll use the rectangle option, and we're going to turn on the option of color fill. And what we're going to want to go ahead and do is we're going to want to create a box. So if we go ahead, for example, roughly around about here for our water and almost our horizon line as well. So it's just a little bit shy of that midway point. And then from there, we can go ahead and start to work in all the other shapes. So we are going to go ahead and create all of them first, and then all the different color variations on top. So we'll go to our layers, we'll create a new one. We'll go to our colors. We'll grab this color here in the top left of the palette. And today's brush of choice that we're going to use is the monoline brush under calligraphy. And if I tap on the brush and we go to stabilization, you can see my streamline is set all the way to max, and stabilization is just over 50, which means I can get some really awesome smooth lines because we're just keeping it minimal and simple today. Brush size is currently maxed out, that's perfectly fine. And we're going to go ahead and start in this bottom left hand corner area down here, where we're going to go ahead and create the bit of land almost that's right in front of us. And we're going to run it to a point around about here. So I'm just going to go ahead and just run that into sort of here. And then as I get down here, I'm going to create that sharp drop off. I can go back up and adjust the shape if I need to and sharpen it up, drag and drop my color in. I can also go ahead and, make minor adjustments if I want to, kind of introduce some additional sort of landscape variation in there. It's totally up to you what you want to create. So have some fun with this one, creating like a little bit of a unique design should you wish to. And then with that in play, we'll go ahead and create a new layer, go backwards. So we'll go down a layer, so we'll drag it underneath. We'll go to our colors. We'll grab this color here, the top of the second column. I'm going to bring the brush size down just a little bit so I can be a little bit more precise. So around about 38%. Our new piece of land is going to run from just here, and it's going to make its way up just above the halfway point. So we can go ahead, for example, and just start roughly here, and we can just create some nice curving shapes because we want that kind of canyon kind of vibe to it. So you can create something simple like this to start with. And then what we also want to do is we want to round that off and create the running flow of water that runs all the way down into the very bottom right corner of our design. And from there, again, drag and drop the color in, and then make your brush size a little bit bigger if you need to, and just create some additional sort of levels of interesting forms in the ground here. And you can have some fun really exaggerating areas. You can always use your eraser, setting that to the monoline brush as well, and you can always go ahead and sort of cut into the land, take it away a little bit. Totally up to you what you want to try and achieve. Let's go down a layer again. So we'll tap on our water this time. We'll create a new layer so it sits in position correctly. We'll go to our colors. We'll grab the next color, which is the top of the third column. Our brush, still the monoline brush, but we just want to switch it back to the paintbrush. And we're going to go ahead and draw in our next piece of land. Now this one's going to be interesting. If we bring the brush size down to around about sort of maybe 30%, we need to go ahead and roughly from this sort of midpoint here of our canvas, we want to go ahead and create an arc that runs then in behind here. We want to make sure we're creating a lovely S shape to our water. So hold your pen down once you've created an arc and try and adjust it to sort of the curve, etc., that you want for your water. This may take a few attempts. You may want to create like a larger hook on the end like this, but as long as you hold your pen down, we want to be dragging that really like over here. So a nice curving shape like this. And then as always, make sure you go from one point that you can see here to off to the edge of the canvas. And then what we're going to want to do is create our next piece of land that's going to run all the way up from this point up to sort of the midway point up here. You can put a little dot if you want, so you've got something to aim for. And we're just going to go ahead and create some really interesting sort of curves in the sort of canyon style valley here. So I'm going to create like a big curve upwards into like a shelf up here, over into a bit of a point maybe, and then let that sort of run off on the left hand side, and drag and drop your color in. And we're getting that S shape. You can already see your land starting to form. Let's go down a layer again. So tap on your water, create a new layer, go to your colors, grab the fourth color on that top row. And again, the first thing we do is create the arc for our water. So we can zoom in a tiny bit, and we want to just position it somewhat towards the middle point of our canvas in terms of sort of horizontally. We want to position it just over that halfway point and roughly halfway through this row. So I'm going to go ahead and just create a bit of a curve over here. I'm going to hold my pen down so I can control that arc. I can control where it sits, how it flows into the rest of the river, and that looks pretty good to me. And then once I've done that, we'll go ahead and create our next piece of land, and that's going to run all the way up to the very top up here. So you can again create those little curves at the bottom if you wish, like I've been doing, and then you can create some interesting sort of shelves if you want, because it's got like that canyon kind of again vibe to it, all the way up to the top right. Drag and drop your color in. Now, of course, I didn't go from this point here off to the end over here on the right. So now when I drag and drop the color in, it sits in that space. We'll go ahead, tap on our water, create a new layer, go to our colors, switch it to the fifth color on that top row, and we'll draw in another one. And this one's going to sit just over here, so a little bit higher than that last sort of point. And it's just going to run its way in here. So I can just create like a bit of a curve here, and hopefully your water's starting to get this lovely kind of S shape to it. You can always move some of the shapes if you need to. And this one's going to run eventually all the way up to here, but we're not going to sort of run in a diagonal line to there. We'll build up kind of gradually towards that. So I'm going to start off like a little bit curvy, a little bit bumpy, and create like a curve maybe here, and then a bit of a shelf, maybe another couple of shelves maybe, and then maybe we just then all of a sudden just go up again into another tier. And again, make sure you go from this line here off to the left hand side and drag and drop your color in. Take a look at your little valley come in along here with all the water. And if you want to, of course, you could go ahead and maybe drag that in a tiny bit. And also grab your eraser, and we'll potentially tune some of the images in a minute. For example, you could go back through all of these layers here and just chop off the ends a tiny bit, just to try and sort of make them run into the water potentially a little bit sharper, less of a rounded point of the monoline brush. We'll adjust those as we go in a moment. Let's go down to our water, create another new layer. We'll go to our colors. We're going to grab the bottom color here at the bottom of the third column from the right. We're going to just make our brush size a little bit smaller. I've gone down to around about 10 or 11%. The brush size isn't necessarily critical for this. And just over our halfway point here, I'm going to create a bit of a curve again for our water. And then this one's going to sort of run in behind this one a little bit more. So we can now start to sort of mask out the rest of the landscape as it makes its way further backwards. So we can just sort of run this into here. You can just create a small loop if you like, all in one motion, and just link it together like so. And you've created your furthest piece. Now every piece of land that we create, if we create a new layer, and drag it underneath your water, because we're now going to work our way beyond that little line there at the back. So if we go to our colors, we'll grab the bottom of this column here, bottom of the second column from the right. And now we're going to just create some valley, some drawing as we speak off from this side over here. I'm going to come in a little bit lower than that. I'm just going to swoop that down. I can try to sort of match up a tiny bit to the landscape kind of elements where we've got these kind of shelves. But as we're getting further back, we want things to get a little bit more minimalistic. We could potentially just add in like a little bit of a shelf on there. So I'll drag and drop the color into that bottom area here because I went edge to edge. It's now filled that in. We'll go to our layers again. We'll create a new one, drag it underneath. We'll go to our colors again. We'll grab the middle color in that second column from the right. And again, we're going to do the same sort of process. We're going to come in from this top edge up here. I'm drawing as we speak, and we're just going to keep layering things. And If you want to, you can kind of be a little bit tricky with it and kind of run it in behind certain shapes if you wish. By the way, the one thing and the one rule you should always try and abide by is you don't really necessarily want a line running into a corner. You wouldn't want that line running into this corner here that I've just marked for you. So you kind of want to find a spot that works out quite nicely. That is just about passable, to be honest, based on that rule. I could, for example, just grab my eraser and just create something that runs through here. But that is typically a golden rule that you shouldn't really run a line into a corner. So just keep an eye out. That's why none of these are coming from these corners here. Let's then go ahead, create a new layer, drag it underneath the last one. And we'll go to our colors again. We'll grab the top of the second column from the right and we'll create our final piece of land. Now this one's going to run roughly up to like this height here, that line that you can see on our guide. And it will swoop to around about sort of this point here in the middle, if not slightly higher. So it's totally up to you what you want to kind of create here. So I always like to go from right to left. It's a little bit easier so I can see where I'm heading. So I'm going to come in from this side up here. I'm going to bring that down, and again, some of those kind of shelf-like shapes, and we'll just allow that just to swoop up over here and off to that far left-hand side and drag and drop your color in. Again, at any stage, if you want to, you can grab your cursor, you can move a shape down, you can move it up. It's totally up to you. Depending on sort of what kind of shapes that you've created, you may want to make some adjustments to your design. Now I'm really happy with how we've got our layout. The final shape that we need to create, if we create a new layer and we drag it right to the bottom, so we hold down on the layer, drag it to the bottom. If we go to our colors, we've got this bright orange here, the top of the third column from the right. And if we go ahead and we just draw in a circle here in the middle, and then pop one finger on the screen to make sure it's a nice perfect circle and hold your pen down at the end of your circle, you'll be able to create a perfectly shaped sun there. We can drag and drop our color in, keeping it really, really simple. Now, just to make sure it's not slightly off-centered, if you go to your cursor and you tap on snapping here in the bottom left, that will just show you a bright orange line that runs through the middle there. You'll be able to see that in the middle. It's gone orange. Now that lets me know that the middle of my shape is in the middle of our canvas. So we're perfectly positioned, ready to go. So now take a look at the rest of your design, triple check you're happy with your water and how it flows through here. And then we're just going to go ahead and add some layer effects to each and every layer that we think is applicable. So I want to save you some layers as we go. If you want to, these back three here, you can group them together if you want, and you could rename them sort of BG for background, and you could collapse that group down, or you can tap on the group and flatten it if you want to into one layer. I'll keep the layers because I can afford them, but if you can't, you can just collapse them down. We've got our water here. Let's create a new layer in front of it. We can tap on that layer and clip it to the water. And we can also swipe from left to right on the water itself and the empty layer, group it together, and you can rename it if you want to. You could do something really simple and just call it 1 or whatever you want to call it, group 1, and then the rest will be 2, 3, 4, 5, or you can name them, whatever's easiest for you. I like to group things, it just makes things a lot easier in your layer stack here. So we've got our empty layer here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here, the middle of the far right column. We're going to go back to our layer. We're going to change its blend mode from normal. We're going to go to the option of, we're going to go to color burn. So we scrolled up to color burn. And then with that in play, we can then go ahead and just create some really simple, really lovely curvy lines for our water. So I'm maxing out my brush size because I don't want to sort of be too sort of particular with this. I just want some simple kind of shapes that just flow in the water. So like this, all the way down, create a loop, drag and drop the color in, and it's just some very simple shading to our design. The only exception would maybe be this corner, but we just have to tidy it up afterwards. So we can go ahead, for example, and just draw off that corner here and create like a bit of a curve. And then maybe we even just let that sort of run into play here a little bit and just fill that in. We can link them together, drag and drop our color in. And as I mentioned, you may want to tidy this up. So you may want to grab your eraser and just kind of swoop in from that point. You could even draw a curve here if you wanted to with your eraser and hold your pen down. And you can create curves and shapes even with your eraser. And if I let go, you'll see at the top here, it says arc. If I tap on that, I'm now editing that arc, and I can just move some of these points and make sure that that shadow kind of runs off of that point on the end there. And when I'm done, I can tap away, I can zoom in, I can just get rid of any excess on there. And now I've got a little bit of a curve. So there's multiple ways to kind of do this, but that's a little method that we can use. We've got another one a little bit further back, so let's go back to our brush. I'm probably going to reduce it down on this occasion to about 10% again. And then from there, we'll create a lovely little curved shadow here and then go all the way around. So you've created a loop and then drag and drop your color in. Really simple. We'll go ahead and then from these points, create tiny little kind of shark teeth kind of shapes to them. Drag and drop the color in. We'll do the same from this one here over onto that point. So just creating that one a bit more manually there. And then in the distance, you can just go ahead and maybe run in like a bit of a shadow along that back edge, like so. And now we've got our shadows in play. We can also add in one more layer effect that's going to go on here. So we're going to create a new layer here. We're going to tap on it and clipping mask it. And we're going to change the blend mode from normal to overlay. We're going to go to our colors, grab the color in the top right of the palette. We'll go to our brush and we're going to go to airbrushing and the soft brush. Size can be around about sort of 25%. And just in the distance, you're going to lightly go left to right here, just at the far distance. And you'll notice you're going to create a bit of a blend of color. And you should start to lose a little bit of your shadows in the distance. And they'll be a little bit darker down here. And we're just going to create like a bit of a nice gradient there running in the water. Very nice and simple. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work from the front to the back now. So we're going to change it up. So we're going to collapse our water group down. You can tap on that and flatten it if you wish. We're going to start at the very top. We're going to go ahead and create a new layer. We're actually going to create two. So we'll create two new layers and we'll tap on both of them and make sure it's clipped to the shape. Again, if you want to, you can swipe from left to right on all three, group them together, and we'll just call this one. We'll know it's the closest to us then. So group number one. The middle layer here that's clipped to our shape, we're going to go ahead and tap on it. We're going to change it to color dodge. We're going to go ahead and bring the opacity down to 30%. And on that layer, using the same color, so we'll just go up into the top left of the palette, we're going to go ahead and create a new shape. And this shape's going to be very simple. We're going to go ahead and sort of go back to our brush, making sure it's back to calligraphy and the monoline brush. We'll max it out in size. And we're going to create some simple kind of interesting sort of rocky shapes here. So go around there, all the way around to your start point, making sure you create a loop, of course, and then drag and drop your color in. And then we're going to go ahead and go to the empty layer above, tap on that, change that to color dodge, and also bring that down to 35% or 30%. And then we're just going to create another shape, which is going to be the top surface of this rock here. So I'm imagining there's going to be like a top surface here. So I can kind of just paint that in like so. I could even be a little bit more techie and go ahead and go from this corner here up into here, only because I've got a bit of a shelf there that I could go ahead and just link them two together, drag and drop the color in, and I've got two shelves on another layer here just in front of us. So we're going ahead and using the same colors on the same shapes, but with a different blend mode and a lower opacity. You can layer the color, the exact same color, but you'll get three tones out of it now. So we're going to go ahead and continue that kind of process all the way back. Again, collapse that group down, tap on it, flatten it if you wish. On this next one, we're going to go ahead and we've got to introduce some shapes onto here. We need three new layers on this one. So we'll clip all three to the next shape, which is the next one down. It's that darkest shape on the right hand side. And we'll swipe from left to right on all four and group them together. Let's rename that and call it group number two. And then the bottom layer here that's clipped out of the three, we're going to go ahead and we're going to keep this one as normal because these ones I've set the colors ahead of time. They didn't quite work with a blend mode, so that doesn't always work. So I've gone ahead and we'll grab the middle color here in the second column, making sure that the layer is set to normal and a maximum opacity should be. We're going to go ahead and draw in another shape. So let's make sure our monoline brush is up to something like 90%. And this is going to be the largest shape. You always start off with the largest shapes first. So we're just going to run this, sort of run it from here, create some interesting wiggles and go all the way around to the starting point and drag your drop your color in. Let's then go to our layers. Go up a layer, go to your color, change it to the bottom color in that second column. And we'll create our second largest shape. You can pick where that runs from. I'm going to run it just close to the corner down here. I'm going to run it up onto there again, kind of imagining there's some interesting shapes, and then go all the way around to my start point and dragging and dropping the color in. And then we've got one more color to add in. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to leave it with the same color, but we're going to go to the empty layer above and change it to the blend mode of add. Now add is usually typically very bright, so we're going to bring that opacity straight down to 30%. And then up here in this top area, we're going to kind of look for one of these kind of shapes that we've created here. And if we go ahead and sort of swoop this in up here and then go around and create a loop, drag and drop the color in, we kind of want to identify maybe a top ledge up there potentially if it's something we can grab hold of. And if you bring your brush size down to maybe like a 5%, just like we did over here, we can maybe look for a sort of shape here of another ledge potentially, and then just bring that into play a little bit like so. Again, make sure you link up your shapes, creating little loops, so when you drag and drop the color in, you get this effect here. You could potentially go ahead and create a very minor one here, just a quick and easy loop down here, and drag and drop your color into that space. You may even want to link these two together. You may even want to sort of run those along there and drag and drop the color into that little space there on the right hand side. Now that is the last layer that we go ahead and create this kind of effect for. The rest of it will just be simple squiggly lines. We won't do that kind of shelf effect. So let's go ahead then and collapse that group down. You can tap on it and of course flatten it if you wish. The next one, we're going to go ahead and add in sort of a similar kind of effect to this area here too. And this one's going to need 4 new layers. So we're going to create 4 new layers and clip all of them. And as I've mentioned, they kind of layer on top of each other. And then that way you get the build up of all the color. And of course, swipe from left to right on all of them, group them together and just rename it group 3. And then the bottom layer in that group, we're going to go ahead and we're going to change the blend mode from normal to add on this occasion. And we're going to bring the opacity right down to 30%. We're going to need to switch our color to the same color as the shape, so the top of the third column. And I'm going to just bring the opacity, the size, should I say, of the brush up, because I want to create simple shapes necessarily. So I want to kind of swoop this in from here and just let that kind of run down to the water a little bit like so, and then go all the way around over to the left edge so that you can drag and drop your color in. Let's then go ahead and go up a layer. Tap on that, change it to add, and also bring the opacity down to 30%. And we're using the same color, but again, we're layering on every single different tone every single time that we do this. I'm going to bring in a shape from here. I'm going to bring in like a little bit of a swoop in it. I'm going to allow that just to run quite low down towards the water and then go all the way around to that left edge. Drag and drop your color into that top space and you create another shape. We'll go ahead, repeat, layer above, tap on it, change it to add and bring that opacity down to 30%. We'll create another shape. So this one's going to run right off the very top edge here, and I'm going to get really close to this one here. I don't want it to just be like a long sort of gradient almost. I want there to be some sort of interesting elements to it. So I'm going to run this down here. I'm going to create like ledges and bumps and lumps. I'm going to get really close to it, but I'm going to allow that then just to run off all the way into the sort of point there at the end. And then I'll go all the way around and link it to where I start my layer there and drag and drop the color in. Triple check you're happy with the aesthetic of it. I think it makes it a little bit more interesting that these two get a little bit closer together. And then we're going to go ahead and go to the layer above. Of course, change the blend mode from normal to add and bring the opacity down to 30%. And once we've done that, we can then use this one here to itemize sort of the brightest areas. So which will probably be down here. So you can kind of brighten up there. You can let that run down off into there too. And then maybe create like a little bit of a gap, maybe like so. And let's make that a little bit more interesting. Let's add some bumps and lumps in there. Or something like that. So we left a little bit of a gap there just to make a little bit of variety in the landscape. You could, of course, bring your brush size maybe down to like a 33 if you really wanted. And again, make it even more interesting with different aesthetics to sort of the land. Maybe even a dip here and there like so. A little something like that. So that's that layer done with. You can of course collapse it down, tap on it and flatten it if you wish. Let's go ahead then and move to the next shape. 3 new layers required for this one. So 3 new layers, tap on all 3 and clip them to the shape. Now this one, we're going to go ahead and first of all change our color. We'll grab the 4th color on that top row. We're going to go back to the layer though and go down to the bottom one that's clipped. Let's obviously group them together as well though. We'll rename that and call it group 4. The bottom one out of the 3 clipped will change to the blend mode, this time of screen. So different colors will give you different effects. Because this yellow over here is a little bit brighter in its base color, add just made it too bright. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the opacity down to 30%. And I'm going to tap away. And we're going to go ahead and create our next shape, which is going to run here roughly. And we're highlighting this side, not this side over here. So just remember that. You've got to fill in the top edge. I'm going to go ahead. I've got my brush size set to 33% in case you're interested. I'm going to go ahead and just create that kind of interesting shape over here. Maybe like a big swoop up and then over there to the right. I need to go from this point, round this edge, all the way over to the right-hand side of the canvas, creating a loop so I can drag and drop my color in. We'll go to the layer above, change the blend mode to the option of screen again, and bring that opacity down to 30%. We're going to go ahead and create another shape and try to sort of familiarize yourself with the shape that you created before, the kind of elements of that in terms of running maybe very close to a particular shape. So we can go ahead, for example, and start down here. We could go ahead and just maybe run that really close to this one, create another gap maybe, and then another one up at the top. Again, go from either your end point or your start point, go around the top of the shape and link up on this side of the shape and drag and drop your color in. And then we'll go ahead and we'll do our final one. So we'll tap on it, tap on its blend mode and change it to the option of screen. And of course, bring the opacity down to 30%. And then on here, you can create your sort of brightest elements in a similar fashion to that one on the left-hand side. So you want to take a look at all of your ledges. Now, of course, the highlight is on the right side here. So it's this edge here, of course, that we're looking to sort of brighten up. So what can we maybe highlight here? Well, we could go ahead and, for example, create like a bit of a swooping shape in here. That could be quite interesting. And then create a loop and drag and drop your color in. We could go ahead and sort of swoop up here, and we want to keep it minimal, of course. So let's go ahead and try and just run that all the way up to the top edge and go all the way down and link them together so I can drag and drop the color in. And taking a look at that, I think I'm happy with that. I don't think we need anything down here. I think that nicely highlights the edge surface there. Could potentially create like a bit of a larger drag in there maybe, where the light just swoops in a little bit more. But our landscape is coming together. We've got one more to do at the back here in terms of adding different colors to it. So we'll collapse group 4 down, of course, tap on it and flatten it if you need to. And the next layer down, we will go ahead and we'll add some colors to this one as well. So we're going to go ahead and create 2 new layers, tap on both and clip them together. And then we'll, of course, swipe from left to right on all 3, group them together, and we'll rename the group and we'll call it 5. Now, by the way, we can also go ahead and turn off our drawing guide. We don't necessarily need that on at this point anymore because all of our shapes are in play. And then we're going to go ahead and on the empty layer that's clipped, we're going to want to go ahead and change blend mode on this one to the option of add on this occasion. And again, 30% is the good number in this whole design. So 30% color change. We're going to go to our colors, change it to the 5th color on that top row. And we're working in this area over here. So we're going to try and sort of factor in the same kind of aesthetic. The final color that we're going to introduce, of course, is this edge lighting here. So we've only got one sort of layer now that we're working on to add in like an interesting larger shape to our design. So can we maybe sort of run this down here, trying to avoid the shape in front a little bit, and then go all the way around, all the way to the start and drag and drop your color in. And then we'll go ahead and go to the layer above, tap on it, change it to the option of add and bring that opacity down to 30%. And we'll add in our edge highlighting. So where can we add in? So definitely up here. I'm going to go ahead and just sort of swoop that in there and create a loop, drag and drop my color in. I've got a little bit of a platform there, so maybe I could actually expand this onto that top ledge. Not trying to sort of do the ledge effect that we did at the beginning too much, but just a little bit more simple because again it's further away. So I'll highlight this ledge there, but I'll also continue that kind of down the landscape all the way down. And then once I get down here, I'll just go round to the top and drag and drop the color. And you can see how simple it needs to be really, and it doesn't need to be too complex. This shape here though, I will make some adjustments to. I think we can use our eraser here now just to kind of make that a little bit less smooth and a little bit more interesting, as I keep saying, to look at. So we've got our landscape all in play, and you've pretty much done the tutorial at this point. If you're happy with yours, you are completely done with it. However, one thing I want to do for this one is if we collapse that group down and we go right to the top of our layers, we're going to go ahead and we're going to swipe down with 3 fingers and go to the option of copy all. I want to give you the option to preserve your layers, but also do this nice frame effect. So if we go ahead and go to our layers, we're going to go ahead and create a new layer and another new layer, the bottom one out of the 2. Go to your colors and double tap in the top left to select white and drag and drop it onto the screen. If we then go ahead and go up to our layers and go to the empty layer above, we can go ahead and we can swipe down with 3 fingers and go to the option here of paste. So you've copied everything that you could see on the screen, and now you've pasted everything you could see on the screen onto one new layer. We can scale that down until we get a little bit of a margin running around. And again, if you've got snapping still turned on in the bottom left, we want to be able to position our design here in the center of our canvas, hopefully trying to hit the orange lines or thereabouts if we can find them in our snapping. If you can't, it's no big deal. It's perfectly fine. You can potentially even work it out afterwards. But I'm going to go ahead and position mine here. And I might even scale that down just a little bit more than that. So I'm going to give you my final dimensions in just a moment, which are in fact 1185 by 1523. And you can see that by tapping on any of the nodes, and you can even type them in if you wish. Tap in on my cursor when I'm done. What we're then going to go ahead and do is use our eraser, and we're just going to go ahead and set the maximum size of the monoline brush, and we're going to swoop and wiggle our pen all the way down here, creating like a bit of a sort of simple kind of wavy effect to your sort of canvas, making it look as a wavy piece of paper almost. Keep the corners nice and sharp if you can, but sort of nice and simple wiggles. But if you can do some occasional ones a little bit more drastic, it will definitely round off your design a little bit more and just kind of match up to that simple minimal effect. So I'm going to run that in. I'll chop the corner off there, and to be fair, I think I might even chop off one of these corners like so. And then once you've done that, you can go ahead and go up to your layer. We've got the layer here with our design on. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Tap on the bottom one out the two, double tap on it, alpha lock it, go to your colors and grab this color here in the top of the second column. And if we go ahead and go up to our layers again and we tap on it and we fill it, you alpha lock the layer, meaning you can't paint outside of it. So you've filled it now completely with the darker tone. We can then tap on it and turn off its alpha lock. We can go to our adjustments and go to Gaussian blur. We can swipe from left to right, and you want to blur it out, but not so that you run off the edge of the screen. So I'm only going to run up to 10% there. I'm going to then tap on my adjustments when I'm done. I'm then going to tap on my adjustments and go to motion blur. I'm going to drag in a bit of a diagonal fashion. If you drag in the middle and then drag down to the bottom right, you should be able to sort of stretch the shadow out a little bit there. And I've gone up to 29% there, motion blur at the top. You can then grab your cursor, use the uniform option and scale it down in size, making it smaller than the canvas. And then we can just position it a little bit lower and a little bit off to the right, and you should get this really awesome floating effect. And if you tap on your cursor when you're done, you pinch with two fingers, you go full screen with four, you end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this simple minimalistic canyon design. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram when you're done. And of course, come and share them with the Discord community as well. It's one of the best places that you can come and share your Procreate work, whether it's a tutorial of mine or another creator, or even your own work, or even traditional work. Anything that you want to share that's art-based, you can come and share them with the community over on Discord. And as always, a massive shout out to all of my supporters over on Patreon who help make these videos possible. If you want to get your name featured in videos, get sneak peeks, early access, but most importantly, access to a catalogue of over 100 Patreon exclusive tutorials using Procreate, well, you can come and join me over on Patreon. There's a link in the description down below. And it starts from just £3 or $4.50, depending on where you live in the world. And you can get access again to a catalogue of over 100 exclusive tutorials. And if you like this video here on YouTube, you'll love this one on the screen now. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.